friends, we are going to skip that. We are in our third week of a sermon series, and it's been 10 years at Island Creek. It's been our sanctuary, it's been our temple, it's been our toolbox. We have lived out of an 8x5 trailer and the basements of extended space. And we have called classrooms our chapels, and we've called gymnasiums or auditoriums our cathedral. We've called the back part of a gymnasium our narthex, right? And today is our last Sunday here, and our last Sunday of being a fully mobile church. And when we started this series, I said that I couldn't think of any other thing for us to study, to dig into together, but during the season, but Exodus. And so we are in the series about moving and what it means to move and what it looks like to move, and how God's moving all of us in unique ways right now, not just our church. Our first week, we talked about kind of the first few chapters of Exodus, how God moves towards us first, moving toward. And the second week, last week, we talked about what it looks like to kind of move forward, to take one faithful step as we watched Moses, fearful and kind of reluctant, move forward in obedience to confront Pharaoh, right? And then today we move out, right? We move out. And we move out of Egypt, move out of the familiar, move out of the school, move into a new space, a new pattern, a new kind of faithfulness, a new set of responsibilities. And moving out sounds really active and brave, right? It does. And it is. But it's also really tender. Because whenever we move out of something, we're leaving behind places and versions of ourselves that have been precious, right? So today we stand in this doorway between what has been and what will be, and we look back with utter gratitude, and we look around with reverence for God, and we look ahead with trust, and we ask, how do we follow God into what's next? So let's locate ourselves in the Exodus story again. After the bush and the confrontation with Pharaoh, the people watched the plagues unfold. They heard Moses repeat God's demand over and over again, "Let my people go." They listened as Pharaoh's heart hardened, and then kind of softened, and then hardened again, and then kind of softened, and then hardened again, and then finally it's the night of Passover. And the people are eating in haste, with their belts fastened, and their sandals on, and their staff in hand. And then it says, the Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste. And so the people took their dough before it was even leavened, and their kneading bowls being bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. And then the simple seismic sentence after that. The people of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth. They moved out. In that moment, they do not have a map. They do not yet have a land. They do not have a temple. They just have this promise, this memory of blood on doorposts and of the felt weight of kneading bowls slung in cloth over their shoulder. And they have this one command, just go. And this is not just movement on a GPS, it is movement of identity completely. They're no longer simply slaves in Egypt, they are the people God is leading out now. They are no longer defined by where they have been trapped, but by the one who travels with them now. And today we kind of echo that moment. We are in our own way standing between Ramesses and Succoth, between what we've always done and what we have yet to learn. And we're not moving because we outgrew God here. God is still very present at Island Creek. We are moving because God is going ahead of us, and all we can do is move. One of my favorite theologians, I quote a lot, says that this is what the gospel is. Just basically, if you were to sum it up, the heart of the gospel is this, that God is with us. So before God works for us, before God asks anything of us, God comes to be with us. At the burning bush, the first great promise to Moses is not, you're going to succeed, Moses. It's, I will be with you, Moses. In Exodus, liberation is not just a change of address. But thank God for a change of address and a mailing place and all that like that. We can think about that. But in Exodus is not just a change of address. It is a change in companionship completely. They are not just leaving Pharaoh, they're learning to live with God in a whole new way. Wells says, we often live as if our main job is to fix the world or to solve all the problems or to make some kind of big impact. And we're tempted to think once we have a building, we can finally do real ministry. It'll really fix things here. But God's first priority is not that we fix anything. God's first priority is to be with us and to teach us to be with one another, right? So when Israel moves out of Egypt, they don't get to have a 5-year strategic plan. They don't get to have a shiny, purpose-built building. They have a God who says, I am with you. Move out with me. So as we leave this school, we're not graduating to some kind of real faith now. Some kind of proper church now. Now I know it's hard to get out of that space because it does feel like a promised land. We're not moving from practice for the last 10 years to like prime time church now, right? We are simply being invited to trust again that the deepest truth about us is not what we do for God, but who we are with God. And it's so easy for a church like us that is doing so much to forget that. God is not saying, at last, you've got a building, now I can finally use you. God is saying, as I have been with you in classrooms and in cafeteriums, so will I also be with you in that space. Right? And you're going to keep learning there. And you're going to make neighbors there. Move out is not move up. It's often confused with that. It is move with. Another one of my favorite kind of theologians, but he's a poet. He's an Irish poet. Begins his gatherings, every gathering, and I've only heard him speak one time at Duke Chapel, but he began that gathering with us with these simple words. I am here, you are here. This is enough. In Exodus terms, Moses at the bush takes off his sandals because here is holy ground. For 10 years, holy ground. For 10 years, Island Creek has been a place where we've said, not Island Creek the whole time, there was Aville, I get that. Schools have been places where we have said, in one way or another, I am here, you are here, God is here, that is enough. And I do realize there were seasons where I did not say that. There were seasons where I clamored for us to compete on the church stage and thought, no, it's not okay for it to just be us here. We have to have pipe and drape. We have to set up coffee every week. We have to tire ourselves out, making this space look as fine-tuned as we can possibly make it. COVID did a thing, and that changed. But really, truly, what we've been doing here is just saying, I'm here, you're here. God's here. Why wouldn't we meet in a place like this then, right? He also writes about leaving places, this poet. He refuses the temptation to pretend that a place we're leaving is either perfect or pointless. We cannot say this place has been perfect. But if we don't honor this season, or we dismiss it as pointless, we've missed what God blesses. What we hoped for, all of our hopes here, every hope we've held while in this space, everything we've found here. What have you found here? Everything we never quite managed here. What were the things we always talked about? Dreamt about, we just didn't quite manage here, which just showed us a little bit more of how human we are. Leaving is not erasing, leaving is blessing and telling the truth about a space. When the Israelites moved out of Egypt, they did not pretend Egypt had been uncomplicated. Egypt was a place of oppression and brutality, a place where God also, though, heard their cries. A place where they cooked meals, where they fell in love, where they buried their dead, where they whispered prayers and they sang songs. So they left with all these bitter memories, and also with bread and jewelry borrowed from neighbors there. It's this super complicated leaving. And our leaving for me is like that. We tell the truth. This school is where some of you met Jesus or reawakened to God. This is where some of you dragged yourself, unsure if you believed, and found to your surprise that you were welcome. Sure, it also sometimes had ketchup on the floor. This is where some of you carried toddlers on hips down hallways, wondering if you would ever not be tired again. This is where some of you served week after week almost anonymously and discovered that your hidden labor was this kind of prayerful sobriety in your life. This is where some of you sat back in the back row. Sorry, doesn't quite work here. We still see you. But where you sat on the back row and some of you wept. Maybe someone saw you, because you're going to get seen here, and sat beside you. We bless this place. We bless Island Creek Elementary. We bless Hayfield Secondary School. The teachers, the administrators, the students, the custodians, the staff, the weekday life that has hummed along even when we weren't here, the classrooms where prayers were whispered with kids that then were felt mysteriously Monday through Friday. The corners where someone stood to catch their breath because something choked them up and they had to go serve a few minutes later, had to break down, had to fill a trailer, even when life would have them kind of just sit in that moment. We do not say this is just a phase. We say this is holy ground. And now, in the words of the poet, we add another sentence. I was here. I've been here. You were here. God was here. And now we go. We move towards God's call. We move forward in obedience. And we move out. In Exodus, moving out in Egypt is not the end of moving either. It's the beginning of a new kind of movement, right? They go from being people moved by Pharaoh's command to people moving by God's presence. Up till now, we have been mobile in a very practical way. And we have sometimes been bound by that. Each week, equipment moved in and out of a trailer. Well, we can't add too much in that trailer, right? There are things we cannot put in that trailer. Each week, setting up here in an hour and a half time period, right? We can't do too much in that hour and a half time period. There are things we couldn't fit in. We can't have Sunday school because it would compete with the job at hand, right? The task at hand, which is making sure the band can practice and the chairs are set up and the door is ready to be opened by whoever is coming in those doors. Ministry lived in basements, garages, stored this borrowed storage we had. Somehow we never had to pay for a storage unit. It's been incredible. I owe a lot to Rita too, right? Before the Baumas, there was Rita's basement. So many of you woke up early to be here. Hung back late, carried, stacked, plugged, taped, greeted. And our mobility has been visible and physical. And as we move into a permanent space, something with more permanency, the risk is that mobility becomes mostly about the furniture again. Now we don't have to move anything, right? What a relief. And there will be real relief, there will be, in not loading that trailer every week. But the call of Exodus, the call of the gospel, is not to stop moving. It's to let our mobility go deeper. From moving equipment to moving towards people we passed hurriedly to get a service set up on time. From arranging a room to rearranging the habits of our church around God's presence and the people right outside our doors. From walking hallways each Sunday to maybe walking neighborhoods, making relationships in schools, getting to know those at the front counter of the library, at the hospital. This is exhausting work, and it has taken the place of a lot of things. Today especially, I speak directly to those of you who have carried on your shoulder this mobile life. You know who you are. The ones who have towed trailer and arrived in at dark, when it's still kind of, the light has not yet even come up, when it's 9 degrees outside, bitter cold of winter, early mornings to unload a trailer, pushed loaded cases across icy parking lots, wondered if you'd slip, turned classrooms into nurseries and worship spaces for kids, coiled cables, whether you did it the right way or not, laid rugs, set out signs, made this school look or the other school look and sound and feel as close to what we could make this thing feel like a church. You may be tempted, those of you who did that, may be tempted to think what you did was just simple logistics. Necessary, but not particularly holy. In truth, you have been like the priests of Israel. Read Exodus a little bit, learn about them. The Levites, they would prepare the space where God's people would meet God. You bore the weight of that so others could rest. And I never heard you all wonder with hard hearts or animosity why there were others not serving, because you knew some people needed to rest. You did repeated tasks whose value was not in their novelty, but in their faithfulness. You practiced being with. You were with God in your labor, offering your muscles and your time and your expertise. You were with one another, swapping stories while rolling carts, laughing while stacking chairs. You were with those who came through the doors, creating a space where they could be received and prayed for, where when we needed another row, you would set it out. Your ministry has never been second class. None of it. It has been sacramental. Outward visible signs of an inward and spiritual grace. And so today is about remembering and recommissioning. Remember, the Sunday the trailer door stuck and we had to pull out things a different way. Remember the Sunday that the trailer was iced in on the side of the road and we had to pull out things a different way. Remember the multiple Sundays where no one came to open the doors at schools and we stood outside with all of our stuff, awaiting and wondering. The times when everything went wrong technically. Complete gremlins and sound gear and AV gear. When the kids ran down hallways and right through the center of the worship space. The faces we saw week to week and how uncertain we were of whether or not they'd come back. The times when I would stand at the door in the early years, counting the number of cars coming into the parking lot. I cannot believe I once did that. Desperate to see who might show up. Your work was, none of it was to impress God, I know. Your work was to join God in delighting that a public school could become for a few hours a sign of the kingdom. But now we recommission it. And also you. Today you are recommissioned. Oh gosh. From setting up chairs to setting up circles of friendship. From carrying soundboards and speakers to carrying one another's burdens, maybe. Giving more time to that. From unlocking trailers to unlocking your attention to who's here and who needs support in a new way. this has all been holy, and it also has been a distraction from the task of being with. And so I recommission you. I remember, I will not forget this day or you. And as we wrap up and the band comes forward, there's this final scene in Exodus, in this section of Exodus that I want to mention. The people have moved out of Egypt. They find themselves trapped now. The sea in front and the army behind them. And they absolutely panic in that moment. Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that they have taken us away to die in the wilderness now? Wow, how dramatic. But they do that. They stand and they panic and they ask such a question. We might recognize their tone. I think we will at times have that tone on the cusp of change. Old ways can suddenly look safer. Some of us may feel, what if we lose something precious when we leave this kind of scruffy, make it work, so Kingstowne kind of season for our church? What if the building makes us complacent? What if it's too formal? What if it feels distant? What if it's too much? What if we're not ready for whatever's next? Into that fear, Moses says, the Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be still. Stillness here is not giving up. It's trusting. It's the pause in which we remember we are not our own saviors. That was the imbalance in those early days. I stood at the door waiting, wondering, would somebody please come? Thinking that if I just met with one more person that week, if we just got one more sign on the road, I could conjure up a church, that it was up to me to do that. And then in the next breath, God says, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Be still and go forward. Sounds really oxymoronic. Trust and move. Be still, but go forward. That's our word today, I think, for us. That's the word. Be still enough to remember God's faithfulness in these 10 years. Still enough to feel gratitude. To let tears fall if you need to during this next song. Still enough to name honestly your fears of the future. It's okay to have them. And then move out. Step into the waters of the unknown. And don't go into the background. But start dreaming what God is calling you to next in this church. We're not moving out because we have figured it all out. We're moving out because we belong to the God who has. Right? Let us pray.